You sit down. The world, for a moment, exhales. The noise of thought begins to thin, like mist over a quiet pond. In the distance, a bamboo grove sways gently, whispering secrets to the wind. The evening light folds softly over moss and stone. A bell rings once, low, deep, and round as the moon. You breathe in, you breathe out. That is enough. This is where our journey begins. The path of letting go is not a path of escape. It is a return to what has always been here, waiting beneath the noise. Let it go does not mean losing. It means loosening. It means to open your hand and let the river flow again. In Zen, we say, when the hand opens, the heart follows. For most of our lives, we clutch tightly. Ideas, names, expectations, memories, fears. We hold on to what is gone and grasp for what has not yet come. We call it control, but it is only tension disguised as certainty. Tonight, we release. You sit in stillness, spine aligned like a mountain peak, breath soft as cloud, drifting through the valley below. Around you, the world hums, a cricket, a rustle, a distant stream. Each sound comes, then leaves. Each moment arises, then falls away. You watch it all, like watching the reflection of the moon in moving water. No need to fix it. No need to hold it still. In Zen practice, we are taught that the way to peace is not through mastering the mind, but by befriending it. You're not here to push your thoughts away. You are here to sit with them, to let them arrive and depart, like birds landing on a branch before taking flight again. Letting go is not an act of force. It is an act of understanding. It begins when you see that everything changes. Every sound fades. Every breath transforms. Every life blooms and withers. Nothing is missing. Nothing is wasted. Imagine yourself walking through a quiet temple garden. The stones are warm from the day's sun. The air carries the scent of pine and incense. A monk sweeps fallen leaves, though the wind keeps bringing more. He smiles, not because the path is clean, but because he understands that it never stays clean for long. That smile is letting go. In this space, you will hear 20 stories. Each one is a lantern hung in the dark, illuminating a small truth of the human heart. Some will be about monks and travelers. Some about children or wanderers lost in their thoughts. Some about silence itself, teaching without words. Every story is a reflection, a mirror to help you see yourself more gently. They are not meant to instruct, but to dissolve the illusion of control. To remind you that peace is not built, it is uncovered. You will not learn letting go. You will remember it. Breathe. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Let your body soften. Notice the weight of gravity, the quiet support of the earth beneath you. Every breath is the universe breathing through you. The Zen masters often say, when you sit, the mountain sits with you. Your stillness is not yours alone. The trees, the stones, the drifting clouds, they too are resting in this same silence. This moment is vast, yet intimate. You belong to it completely, and yet you do not own it. It passes through you like wind through an open gate. That is the teaching. Do not hold the wind. Let it pass, and it will cool your face. So many of us live entangled, held by memory, bound by regret, chased by the future. We think freedom lies in achievement or arrival, but the masters say, you are already home. The art of letting go is remembering that nothing you grasp can stay. The cherry blossom falls not because it is weak, but because it is time. Sit quietly now. Listen to your breath as it moves in rhythm with the world. Let your thoughts be clouds drifting across the sky of your awareness. Do not chase them. Do not name them. Just watch them change, shape, and dissolve. In this gentle awareness, a door begins to open, one that has always been here. You do not need to push. Just breathe and it opens. Through that door lies the journey ahead. 20 tales of wisdom and release. Each story will unfold like petals from the same flower, unique in form, but rooted in the same soil, the art of letting go. These stories will not demand effort from you. They will not test you. They will empty you slowly, quietly, until only peace remains. If your mind wanders, smile. It means you are human. If tears arise, let them fall. It means that something within you is melting, something that no longer needs to be carried. When the old monk Ryokan was asked why he never preached, he said, "I have nothing to say. I only sweep the leaves." This series of stories is like that sweeping. Each one clears a little more of the path, revealing what was always underneath, your natural, effortless presence. So before we begin, pause. Close your eyes. Place one hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm, a silent drum beating in the forest of your body. The body knows how to breathe. The heart knows how to love. The earth knows how to turn. You do not need to control any of it. Just let go. You are not falling. You are floating. The moment you stop resisting, the current carries you home. Beyond words, beyond thoughts, beyond the need to be anything. There's just this. Breath, silence, presence. Let that be your teacher. And as the first night settles over this temple of stillness, you are ready to hear the stories. Each one is a reflection of you, your fears, your hopes, your heart's secret wish to rest. Do not try to hold them. Let each story arrive like a breeze through the bamboo. Let each one pass without clinging. And when the last story ends, may you find that the one who was grasping is gone, and only peace remains. You breathe again. The bell sounds once more, clear and pure. The moonlight rests on the floor beside you, and all is well. Story 1. The Monk and the Broken Bowl. The dawn mist drifted low over the temple courtyard. You could hear the soft rhythm of a bamboo fountain, water filling, tipping, and emptying into stone. A single bell rang from the meditation hall, a sound so pure it seemed to hang in the air like light. You stand at the edge of the garden, the smell of rain and cedar mixing with the faint trace of incense. Inside the hall, an old monk named Hosen sat cross-legged before a small wooden table. Before him lay his begging bowl, smooth, round, worn by decades of use. Every morning, he polished it as if it were the moon itself, wiping it clean of dust and yesterday's offerings. He had carried that bowl for 50 years. He called it his companion. But that morning, as he cleaned it, his sleeve caught the edge. The bowl slipped, fell, and shattered against the stone floor. The sound was small, almost nothing, but in the silence of the hall, it echoed like thunder. Hosen froze. The fragments lay scattered before him, pale gray against the dark stone. For a long time, he didn't move. The other monks, hearing the sound, turned their heads, but Hosen raised a hand gently, asking for quiet. He looked at the broken pieces for a while, then exhaled. A long, deep, steady breath. You watch as he kneels, not to gather the pieces, but simply to see them. One by one, the edges caught the light. Some still curved like the rim of a moon. Some were sharp and jagged like mountain peaks. For most, the instinct would be to sigh, to mourn, to whisper, "My bowl is gone." But Hosen only smiled. He bowed to the fragments and whispered, "Thank you." That was all. Later that day, a young novice found him sitting by the temple pond, watching the koi swim through the reflections of clouds. "Master," the boy asked, "doesn't it sadden you? That bowl was with you for so long." Hosen nodded slowly. "Yes, for many years." "Then why do you smile?" "Because," Hosen said, "it has fulfilled its purpose. Now it rests." The boy frowned. "But it's broken." The old monk dipped a leaf into the water and let it float away. "Tell me, my son," he said, "when autumn comes and leaves fall from the trees, do you cry for them?" "No, master." "And yet they die." The boy looked down, uncertain. "But they're supposed to." Hosen smiled again. So was the bowl. He pointed toward the pond. "Do you see the ripples? Each one comes, spreads, and disappears. If you try to stop the water from moving, it only grows muddy. But if you watch without grasping, it becomes clear again." The boy thought for a while. "But master, what will you eat from now?" "Perhaps my hands," Hosen said, lifting them with a soft chuckle. "They too have served me well." Silence followed, the good kind of silence, the kind that feels alive. The air hummed softly with cicadas, and the wind stirred the pine needles overhead. You could hear the world breathing again. That evening, the young novice returned to his sleeping quarters, still thinking about the bowl. He imagined himself dropping his own bowl, and how he would panic, how his chest would tighten, how he would feel the sting of loss. He realized that his master had not lost the bowl. He had simply released his idea of it. And that difference, he understood, was everything. Days passed. The broken pieces remained on the stone floor of the meditation hall. The other monks offered to clean them, but Hosen refused. "Let them rest," he said. "They are still teaching." And so they did. Each morning, the sunlight streamed through the shoji doors and fell across the fragments, scattering patterns of light like stars. Each night, the moon reflected in the cracks, silver and soft. The brokenness became beautiful. The stillness around it became sacred. You breathe in. You see the bowl before you. Perhaps in it, you see something of your own, a memory, a plan, a dream, a person you've clung to. Perhaps something you've lost. You feel the same ache, small, quiet, honest. Now breathe out. Imagine that ache softening, not because the loss disappears, but because you stop holding it so tightly. Let the hand open. Let the air move through. Hosen once said, "When you stop asking life to be different, life stops asking you to suffer." That night, rain fell gently over the temple roofs. The broken bowl filled with raindrops, each piece cradling its own reflection of the moon. The novice stood at the doorway, watching the light shimmer over the shards. He whispered to himself, "Nothing is ever truly broken." In that moment, he understood, not through words, but through seeing, that letting go is not a loss. It is a transformation. What breaks reveals. What ends begins again. In your own mind, perhaps there's a bowl you hold, an image of how things should be. You polish it daily, fearing that cracks might appear. But cracks are not the enemy. They're the doorway through which light enters. The Zen masters say, when the teacup is broken, the tea is free. Think of that. You are not your bowl. You are the space the bowl contains. You are the silence between each breath. You are the awareness watching all things change. You may hear the faint ring of that bowl even now, the echo of its fall, not as a tragedy, but as an awakening. That sound lives on, not in grief, but in clarity. Breathe again, in, out. You're not here to hold the pieces. You're here to see the beauty in what remains. The story closes as the dawn returns. The mist has lifted. The pond reflects the clear morning sky. The broken bowl lies still, filled with light. The old monk sweeps the floor around it, not to hide it, but to honor it. Each sweep of his broom is like a breath, rhythmic, quiet, endless. He does not hurry. He does not pause. He simply moves as the world moves in perfect harmony. At last, he looks up and says softly, "The bowl was never mine. It only passed through my hands." And just like that, he walks away, leaving behind nothing but peace. Letting go does not mean losing what you love. It means recognizing that what you love has its own path. When you stop trying to control, everything finds its natural place, and peace follows naturally. Story 2. The Traveler in the River. The morning sun rose slow and golden over the valley. Mist curled around the pines, and a gentle breeze whispered through the reeds that lined the riverbank. You can hear the soft music of water over stones, 1,000 tiny ripples singing in harmony. This is where our next story begins. A lone traveler walked along a narrow path beside that river. His name was Taro, a man who had been searching for peace for many years. Yet peace always seemed one valley further away. He carried a pack on his back, heavy with maps, plans, and small belongings that he insisted were necessary. But the truth was, the weight came not from what he carried, but from what he could not release. For 3 days, he had followed the river, hoping it would lead him to the mountain monastery said to rest at its source, a place where wisdom flowed as freely as water. Yet each time the river bent or widened, he grew impatient. "It's too slow," he muttered. "If only it went straight, I'd be there by now." He would throw pebbles into the current, watching how quickly they vanished downstream. He envied the way they surrendered. He wanted that ease, that lightness, but he didn't know how. By the 4th day, the path ended. The land dropped into a wide gorge, and the only way across was the river itself, broad, swift, and cold. Taro stood at the edge, staring at the opposite bank. He could see the faint shimmer of temple roofs through the morning haze. So close, yet between him and peace lay this restless torrent. He stepped into the water. It was colder than he expected, sharp, alive. The stones beneath his feet were slick, and the current pulled at his legs like unseen hands. He clenched his jaw, leaning forward, determined to cross. Halfway through, the current deepened. The force grew stronger. He tried to fight it, pressing against the flow, pushing with all his might. But the more he resisted, the more it fought back. Water splashed into his face, his feet slipped, his breath quickened. He shouted, "Why must it be so hard?" And in that moment, he lost his footing, The river took him. At first, panic filled him. He flailed, grasping for rocks, branches, anything. But the river didn't stop. It carried him relentlessly, over shallows and under low-hanging boughs. The current roared like thunder in his ears. He gasped for air, terrified of being swept away forever. Then, through the chaos, he remembered something an old villager had said days earlier. Do not fight the river. The river always wins. Flow with it, and it will carry you home. Exhausted, Taro let go. He stopped struggling. He spread his arms, let his body float. The water that once felt like an enemy suddenly became a cradle. It lifted him, guided him. He watched the trees drift past, the sky above bending and spinning softly. The roar of water became a lullaby. He began to feel something he hadn't felt in years: trust. Minutes, or perhaps hours, passed. Time blurred. The river curved and slowed, the current easing into calm. He found himself drifting toward a quiet bank covered in soft moss. There, the river gently set him down, unharmed. He lay still, eyes open to the canopy of leaves above, breath merging with the rhythm of the world. When he sat up, he saw a small shrine nearby, a stone Buddha half covered in moss, sitting peacefully beside the flowing water. It was as if the river had known exactly where to take him. He laughed quietly to himself. All his planning, all his control, and yet the moment he released them, he arrived exactly where he needed to be. You breathe in. You imagine yourself lying beside that same river. The sound of water surrounds you, gentle and endless. The sunlight flickers through the leaves, dancing on your skin. For the first time, you don't feel the need to move. You don't need to reach the other side. You're already home. Taro sat for a long time by the shrine. He watched the current twist and shimmer, sometimes strong, sometimes still. He noticed how the river did not resist the rocks in its way. It simply moved around them. Where a fallen branch blocked the path, the water slipped beneath, patient and sure. It never hurried, yet it always arrived. He realized then that the river was his teacher. Its lesson was simple. The way forward is not in fighting, but in flowing. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I see now. I have been trying to carry myself to peace, but peace was carrying me all along." The breeze rustled through the reeds in response, soft as a breath. A leaf fell into the water beside him and floated away. Taro smiled. He placed both hands on the moss and bowed to the river. When he stood, he noticed something. His heavy pack was gone. Somewhere in the rush, it had slipped away. At first, he reached for it instinctively, but then stopped. He watched it drift down the current, smaller and smaller, until it disappeared. Instead of panic, he felt relief. He whispered again, "Thank you." You breathe out. Imagine yourself setting down your own pack, the weight of what you've been carrying, all the things you think you must control, all the plans that refuse to go as planned. Let them fall. Let the river take them. Feel how light you become. When Taro finally reached the monastery, the monks welcomed him without question. They bowed, offered tea, and showed him to a quiet place by the water where he could sit and reflect. There was no grand ceremony, no reward, only stillness and the slow rhythm of his breath blending with the pulse of the earth. Days later, when a young monk asked how he had found his way there, Taro only smiled. "I stopped trying to," he said. He spent the rest of his years living near that river, teaching others not with words, but by example. Whenever someone came to him burdened by worry or frustration, he would take them to the riverbank. He would hand them a leaf and say, "Place it on the water and watch. That is how you must live." And each time, as the leaf floated away, something inside the visitor softened. Not because they gained something new, but because they finally stopped resisting what already is. The river flowed on, as it always had, as it always will. And those who learned to flow with it found peace not at the end, but in every moment it carried them. You sit now, the sound of water still echoing faintly in your mind. Your breath and the river move as one. You don't have to control. You don't have to rush. You are the current, not separate from it, but part of it. Let the current take you. Let life move through you freely. You are not falling behind. You are exactly where you need to be. Peace comes when you stop fighting the flow of life. When you let go of resistance and trust the current. Life carries you exactly where you are meant to be. Story 3. The Child and the Lantern. Night had fallen over the mountain village. A soft wind stirred the chimes that hung from the temple eaves, their sound like whispers between stars. In the distance, frogs sang from the rice fields, and the moon floated pale above the pines. It was the kind of night where even silence seemed alive. At the edge of the temple grounds lived a small child named Kiko. She was 7 years old, curious and kind, but afraid of the dark. Every night, as the lanterns went out one by one, fear would bloom quietly inside her chest. The rustle of trees became ghosts. The hoot of an owl became a monster's breath. The shadows on the wall grew teeth and eyes. One evening, she went to the old monk Ryerson and said, "Master, please teach me how not to be afraid." The monk looked up from where he was sweeping the courtyard. He smiled, not because he dismissed her fear, but because he understood it completely. "Ah," he said softly, "you wish to walk through darkness." Kiko nodded. "Yes, I want to be brave." Ryerson placed his broom aside. "Then come with me." He led her to the edge of the garden, where a small clay lantern sat cold and unlit. The monk struck flint, lit the wick, and placed the lantern in her hands. Its glow was small, trembling like the breath of a firefly. "Hold it carefully," he said. "Tonight, you will take a walk through the forest." Kiko's eyes widened. "Alone?" Ryerson shook his head. "Not alone. You'll have your light." She hesitated. "But what if it goes out?" "Then you will know darkness," he said. "And that, too, is a teacher." So the child bowed and began her walk. The path was narrow, lined with bamboo that swayed and creaked softly in the wind. The light from her lantern danced over the leaves, making them shimmer gold and green. She walked slowly, her little feet brushing through fallen petals and pine needles. At first, she felt brave, the way new courage feels when it's fresh and untested. But soon the forest deepened and the shadows grew thicker. The light from her lantern seemed too small now, swallowed by the dark. Each sound, the snap of a twig, the distant cry of a night bird, made her heart jump. She whispered, "I'm not afraid," though her voice trembled. The wind blew stronger, and the flame flickered. For a moment, she thought it would die. She crouched, cupping her hands around it. Her breath slowed. She remembered the monk's words, "You have your light." And so she watched the flame. She noticed how it bent with the wind, how it struggled yet never gave up. Its glow wasn't angry or desperate. It simply adapted. It leaned, then straightened again, always returning to center. Something inside her softened. She realized that the lantern was alive in its own quiet way, breathing as she breathed, learning as she learned. She stood again and kept walking. The deeper she went, the quieter her fear became. The forest had not changed, only her way of seeing had. The same branches that once looked like claws now looked like open hands. The same sounds that once startled her now sounded like songs. Then suddenly a gust, a sharp, cold wind swept down from the mountain. Her flame danced wildly and then went out. Darkness swallowed her whole. She froze. The forest became infinite. No edges, no shapes, only sound and breath. For a moment, her fear returned, raw and ancient. Her hand shook. She wanted to run. But then, she remembered the monk's last words. Then you will know darkness. And that, too, is a teacher. So she did not move. She stood still, letting her eyes adjust, letting her breath steady. She began to hear what the darkness truly sounded like, not as a threat, but as a living presence. Crickets chirped softly, leaves rustled, the river murmured somewhere far away. The world was not trying to scare her. It was just being itself. Slowly, Kiko knelt down and placed a lantern on the ground. She closed her eyes. She breathed deeply. And in that moment of surrender, something remarkable happened. The moon broke free from a passing cloud, spilling silver light through the trees. The forest glowed. Every leaf shimmered. Every path glistened. She could see without her lantern. Her small face lit up with wonder. She whispered. The light never left. It just changed form. When she returned to the temple, Ryerson was waiting at the gate. He saw the unlit lantern in her hands and smiled. "Tell me, child," he asked gently, "what did you learn?" Kiko thought for a moment and said, "When my light went out, I thought I was lost. But then I saw that the moon was lighting the world for me. Even in darkness, there is light. It just isn't always mine." The monk nodded, eyes soft as candle flames. He said yes, to see that truth is to walk without fear. That night, Kiko placed her lantern by her bedside, but she did not light it. She slept peacefully under the glow of the moon. The shadows no longer scared her. They had become part of the light. You breathe in. You imagine holding your own lantern, the small, flickering awareness that guides you through life. Sometimes it shines bright. Sometimes it fades. But the light itself, the awareness behind all things, is never gone. When your little flame seems to die, the moon within you rises. You breathe out. Feel the fear leaving your body, melting into stillness. The unknown is not against you. It is simply greater than you imagined. In Zen, we say, when a lantern goes out, the eyes become stars. Meaning, when your personal light fails, the universe offers its own. So let go. You do not have to keep every flame burning. You do not have to chase away every shadow. When you release your need to control the light, you begin to see the infinite glow that was always around you. The temple chimes ring again. You sit quietly, the echo fading into night. The moonlight rests on your face, cool and soft. You smile, not because you conquered fear, but because you befriended it. And in that friendship, peace is born. When you stop fearing darkness, you discover that light was never missing. It simply changed its form. Awareness, not control, is the true lantern that guides the heart. Story 4. The Farmer and the Empty Field. The morning mist lifted slowly over the valley. A faint gold light stretched across the fields, brushing dew from the tips of young grass. A farmer named June stood at the edge of his land, gazing over rows of freshly turned soil. He held a small wooden hoe in his hand, its handle smooth from years of use. The scent of earth filled the air, cool, rich, alive. It had been 3 months since June had planted his seeds. Every day he watered the soil, whispered small prayers, and waited. But still nothing. No sprouts, no green shoots, no signs of life. The neighbors' fields were alive with growth. Their rice shimmered in the morning sun. Their beans climbed eagerly up the bamboo poles. But June's field remained barren, brown, silent, empty. Each day, he felt his patience thinning like thread pulled too long. He would stand there muttering, "What did I do wrong?" He began to dig small holes, searching for the seeds, afraid they had rotted. But each time he disturbed the soil, he only buried them deeper. One afternoon, while June was pacing his field, an old monk from the nearby temple walked by. He carried a basket of herbs and a calmness that seemed to slow the air around him. Seeing the farmer's troubled face, he stopped. "June," he said, "why such a heavy heart?" The farmer sighed. "I've planted, watered, prayed, yet my field gives me nothing. The others harvest, I only wait." The monk smiled faintly. "Then perhaps it is time to stop waiting." June frowned. "How can I not wait? I need the harvest." The monk knelt and touched the soil with his fingers. "It is good earth," he said, "but tell me, when you plant a seed, do you pull it upward to make it grow faster?" "Of course not," June said. "That would kill it. Then why do you pull a time?" The monk brushed the dirt from his hands, stood, and continued down the road, leaving the farmer standing in silence. That night, June lay awake. The monk's words echoed in his mind. Why do you pull a time? He realized how restless he had become. He was not caring for the field. He was controlling it. His hope had turned into impatience, and his patience into anger. He had stopped trusting the soil. The next morning, he rose before dawn. He walked to his field and sat in the middle of it. He didn't touch the soil, didn't water it, didn't mutter a word. He simply breathed and listened. At first, there was nothing, only silence and wind. But as the sun rose higher, he began to hear what he had missed. The hum of bees drifting through the nearby forest, the rustle of roots shifting deep underground, the faint cracking of soil as it warmed. Life was moving quietly, invisibly. It had been all along. From that day on, June stopped digging and started watching. He watered the field once each morning, then sat for a few minutes to breathe and bow in gratitude. He no longer asked when. He simply said, "Thank you." Weeks passed, still no green, but his heart grew lighter, his steps slower, his breath calmer. He began to see beauty in the emptiness. The smooth patterns of wind across the dust, the footprints of sparrows, the glimmer of dew under sunrise. The field, once a source of worry, became a mirror for his mind. Then one morning, after a soft night of rain, he saw it, tiny threads of green breaking through the brown. Not many, but enough. He smiled, but this time not with relief, with reverence. He whispered, "Welcome." The sprouts grew slowly. Some survived, some didn't. But June did not measure his peace by their number. He understood now that his role was not to control growth, but to create space for it. When the monk passed by again months later, he saw the field bright with green and the farmer sitting calmly beneath a willow tree. The monk said, "I see your field has awakened." June nodded. "Yes, master. It seems the earth grows best when I stop forcing it." The monk smiled. "That is true of the heart as well." They stood together for a moment, watching the wind move through the leaves like breath through lungs. The monk spoke softly. "You have learned the rhythm of things. The seed knows when to open. The sky knows when to rain. You do not need to hurry life, only to trust it." June bowed deeply. The monk continued on his way, and June returned to his stillness. You breathe in. You imagine yourself sitting in that same field, warm sunlight on your skin, the faint hum of insects in the distance. The earth beneath you is alive, though unseen. You realize that even when nothing seems to be happening, everything is quietly preparing. You breathe out. Feel the weight of your own expectations leave your body. All the shoulds, the why not yet, the restless pushing. Let them fall into the soil. They too can become nourishment. Zen masters say, "The bamboo grows not because it tries, but because it waits." Growth is not something you chase, it is something you allow. Just as the field must rest between harvests, so must the heart rest between achievements. There is a sacred pause in all creation, a stillness where transformation gathers strength unseen. If you can sit in that stillness without forcing, you will discover that patience is not emptiness. It is quiet faith. The seasons turn. The farmer's field thrives. And yet, even when harvest comes, June no longer clings to it. He bows before his full baskets, then scatters a handful of grain back into the wind. When asked why, he smiles and says, "Because the earth gave freely, and so must I." You sit with that image, the farmer standing in his green field, releasing grain into the sky. The wind carries it, scattering new seeds across unseen soil. Some will grow, some will not, but all are free. This is letting go, to sow without demanding, to care without controlling, to trust the invisible cycles of your own becoming. The temple bell sounds in the distance. A new day begins quietly, exactly as it should. True patience is not waiting for something to happen. It is trusting that life already knows when to bloom. When you stop pulling at time, peace takes root naturally. Story 5. The Two Monks and the Muddy Road. The rain had just stopped. Mist hung low over the mountain path, and the smell of wet earth rose with every step. Water dripped from pine needles like pearls falling into silence. Two monks, Jin and Tada, walked side by side on their journey back to the monastery after visiting a nearby village. Their straw sandals squelched in the mud. They had been walking since dawn. The storm had swollen every stream, turning quiet paths into rivers of clay. When they reached a bend in the road, they found a young woman standing at the edge of a flooded crossing. She wore a silk kimono, bright red, already splattered with brown. Her face was tight with worry. She couldn't cross without ruining her clothes. Jin, the older monk, smiled gently, bowed, and without hesitation lifted her onto his back. She gasped, startled, but clung to him as he stepped into the mud. The water surged around his knees. Each step was heavy, deliberate. Tada followed behind, clutching his robes to keep them clean. When they reached the other side, Jin set the woman down. She bowed deeply, thanked him, and went on her way down the road. Jin nodded once, brushed the mud from his robe, and kept walking. Tada said nothing. Not for an hour, not for two. The silence grew thick, like mist that refused to lift. Finally, when the temple roofs came into view, Tada burst out. "Brother Jin, you broke our vow. You touched a woman. You carried her." Jin stopped. He turned, eyes calm, rain still glistening on his brow. "I left the woman by the road 2 hours ago," he said softly. "Why are you still carrying her?" Tada froze. The words struck him harder than the rain ever could. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The two monks stood there in silence. A breeze moved through the pines, scattering droplets like tiny bells. Tada lowered his gaze. For the first time, he saw how heavy his mind had become. He had been dragging that moment like a stone tied to his chest, replaying it, judging it, defending it. As they resumed their walk, something changed. Tada felt the air lighten around him. He noticed the smell of wet cedar, the chorus of frogs from the valley. All the beauty that had been hidden behind his judgment suddenly returned. That night, back at the monastery, Tada knelt before Jin. "Forgive me," he said. "I was blind." Jin poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to him. "There is nothing to forgive," he said. "We all carry what we do not need. The practice is only to notice and to set it down." They drank in silence. The rain began again, soft and rhythmic on the roof. Each drop seemed to say the same thing. Fall, release, disappear. You breathe in. You remember a moment you still carry. A word, a look, a memory that clings like wet clothes. Perhaps someone wronged you. Perhaps you wronged yourself. Feel its weight. Then breathe out and picture placing it gently by the roadside. You don't have to throw it away. You just don't have to hold it anymore. In the candlelight of the temple, Jin later told his students, "The body carries what the mind will not release. Let go of the thought and the shoulders relax. Let go of the story and the breath deepens." He paused, smiling faintly. When you walk a muddy road, your feet will get dirty. Clean them, but don't spend the rest of the day staring at your footprints. The students laughed softly, but the laughter felt like cleansing rain. Tada, sitting among them, listened with new ears. He realized how much life he had missed while replaying old scenes. He promised himself to practice empty-handed walking, to meet each step fresh, unburdened by the last. Weeks later, another heavy rain fell. The paths turned to rivers again. This time, Tada came upon a child struggling to carry a basket of firewood through the mud. Without hesitation, he took the basket, crossed the stream, and returned it. When he met Jin's eyes across the road, they both smiled. Nothing needed to be said. The lesson had taken root. You breathe again. The mud between your own thoughts begins to settle. You see how judgment hardens into weight and how understanding softens it back into water. Let the water flow. Let the mind clear itself. You don't have to purify every drop. Just stop stirring the mud. Zen teaches, the past is a dream that ended at sunrise. To carry into daylight is to walk blind. When you put it down, you finally see the color of the sky again. Imagine yourself walking that same mountain path now. The rain has stopped. The air smells of pine and earth. You carry nothing but your breath. With each step, the world becomes lighter, brighter, closer. Ahead, the temple bell rings once, low, patient, final. You bow to the sound and keep walking free. Peace is not found by avoiding the mud, but by refusing to carry it once you've crossed. When you release the stories of the past, every step becomes clean again. Story 6. The Tea Master and the Broken Sword. The rain had passed, leaving the streets of Edo shining like black glass. Paper lanterns glowed faintly under the eaves of tea houses. Somewhere down the narrow road, a flute played, slow, trembling, full of longing. Inside one small tea house, a man named Kenji knelt before a low wooden table. He was a tea master, gentle, precise, and humble. His robe was plain. His movements flowed like a slow river. No waste, no rush. That evening, a samurai lord sat across from him, watching silently as Kenji poured the hot water into the teapot. The steam rose in soft spirals. The fragrance of roasted tea leaves filled the air, calm, earthy, grounding. The samurai said, "I've been told your way of tea is unmatched." Kenji bowed slightly. "It is not mine, my lord. The tea prepares itself. I only serve it." The samurai smirked. "Then stir it well. I wish to test your calm." As Kenji reached to place the teacup before him, his hand brushed the edge of the tray. A small porcelain bowl fell to the floor and cracked. The sound broke the stillness like thunder. The samurai's eyes narrowed. Clumsy, Kenji paused, bowed to the broken bowl, and whispered, "Thank you." Then he continued pouring as if nothing had happened. His movements did not waver, not even for a breath. The samurai watched, intrigued. When the ceremony ended, he said, "Your hand did not tremble." Kenji smiled gently. "The bowl was only porcelain. My piece is not." The samurai leaned forward. "Such calm deserves a test. Tomorrow, meet me at dawn in the courtyard. Bring a sword." Kenji's heart froze. He was no warrior. He had never lifted a blade in his life. But he bowed, whispering, "As you wish, my lord." That night, he could not sleep. He sat in his small room beside the teapot that had served him for years. The moonlight slid across the floor, pale and soundless. Fear stirred inside him, cold, tight, heavy. He thought of running, of begging for mercy, of hiding in the forest. But each thought felt like noise inside a still pond. He looked at his teapot, still warm from the evening. He realized that every act of tea-making was a rehearsal for this moment. Each breath, each bow, each still movement in the face of heat, of fragility, of silence, all of it was training. He whispered, "The tea ceremony never ends." At dawn, Kenji walked to the courtyard. Mist hung low over the garden. The samurai was already there, sword gleaming, expression sharp as steel. Kenji bowed. In his hands he held not a sword, but a bamboo practice blade, one the monks used for ritual training. The samurai frowned. "You insult me," Kenji said softly. "I carry no weapon that can wound." The samurai drew his blade. "Then you will die unarmed." Kenji closed his eyes, and inhaled once, deeply. He exhaled, bowing low. In that single breath, he let everything go, his fear, his thoughts, even his name. Only stillness remained. When he lifted his head, his eyes were clear as still water. He stood quietly, bamboo, sword lowered at his side. No tension, no defiance, only presence. The samurai raised his blade, but as he looked into the tea master's eyes, something shifted. He saw no resistance there, no pleading, no fear. Only an infinite calm that seemed to mirror the morning itself. His grip trembled. The air between them thickened with silence. After a long pause, the samurai lowered his weapon. He sheathed the blade and bowed deeply. "You are no ordinary man," he said. "Your calm defeats mine." Kenji bowed back. "There was no battle, my lord, only reflection." The samurai turned and walked away, his armor clinking softly. The duel had ended before it began. Kenji stood alone in the courtyard, breathing slowly, the sound of wind passing through the bamboo grove behind him. He looked at the bamboo sword in his hands, simple, hollow light. He smiled. "This," he whispered, "is the way. You breathe in. You feel the air moving through you, steady, rhythmic. You imagine yourself standing in that same courtyard. No enemy, no defense, only awareness. The body may tremble, but awareness does not. You breathe out. You realize that true strength is not the ability to fight, but the ability to remain still in the face of fear. Fear is not an enemy. It is a shadow cast by the mind when it forgets the light." Kenji returned to his tea house and poured himself a cup. The same water, the same teapot, the same ritual, yet everything was different. He understood that every drop of tea carried the lesson of that morning. Life will test you not to destroy your calm, but to show you where it truly lives. Years later, travelers still spoke of the tea master who faced a samurai and lived. They said his tea tasted different, not sweeter, not stronger, but emptier, as if it held the silence of a sword that never struck. Zen masters tell this story to students who confuse peace with comfort. Peace is not comfort. It is surrender without collapse. It is the still flame that burns even as the wind howls. So sit now, breathe deeply. Let your body soften, but your mind remain clear. If fear arises, bow to it. Thank it, then return to your stillness. The sword of life may hang above your head, but your calm does not depend on whether it falls. It depends only on whether you keep holding your breath. Breathe again. Let go. The sword may break. The tea will still be warm. True peace is not found in avoiding fear, but in meeting it with total presence. When you stop resisting danger and simply stand still in awareness, even the sharpest sword cannot reach you. Story 7. The Painter and the Empty Canvas. A morning fog drifted over the mountain village, soft and weightless. The temple bells had not yet rung. In a quiet studio overlooking a stream, a painter named Eu sat before a blank canvas. For 3 days, he had not touched it. The paper was pure white, stretched tight and glowing in the soft light of dawn. Beside him lay his brushes, his inkstone, and a bowl of clear water. Outside, the sound of the stream murmured like a whisper of time. Eu had been known throughout the province for his art. His landscapes were praised in temples and homes alike. Delicate mountains wrapped in mist, rivers flowing endlessly through silent valleys. But lately, his brush had grown heavy. Every stroke felt wrong. Every shade felt too dark or too pale. He told himself, "I will not paint until I am ready." But days turned into weeks, and the white canvas stared back like a mirror of his doubt. One morning, his teacher, the old master Jokei, visited. He looked at the empty canvas, then at Ayu's weary face. Still waiting for perfection, the master asked. Ayu bowed his head. "I want the painting to be flawless. The world deserves only the best of me." Jokei smiled softly. He picked up the brush and dipped it lightly into the ink. Then, without hesitation, he drew a single rough line across the canvas. Uneven, bold, imperfect. The ink bled into the fibers, spreading like water through snow. Ayu gasped. "You ruined it." The master chuckled. "Ruined?" The canvas was never alive until now. He handed the brush back. "Perfection," he said, "is the enemy of creation. The moment you demand it, your spirit freezes. The brush trembles not because you lack skill, but because you cling to outcome." Ayu stared at the line. Something inside him cracked open, not from anger, but from relief. He realized how long he had been waiting for the world to grant him permission to begin. He had wanted to paint mountains, but had forgotten to look at the real ones outside his window. Jokei poured tea and continued. In Zen, we speak of Enso, the circle drawn in one stroke. It is said that the most beautiful Enso is the one that is incomplete, because it shows life moving through it. The circle breathes. The master rose and walked to the door. Before leaving, he said, "Paint not to complete, but to express." The mountain does not paint itself to be perfect. It simply stands. When the master left, Ayu sat for a long time, watching the imperfect black line. It curved slightly upward, like a river bending toward the horizon. He felt something stir, the quiet hum of aliveness he had forgotten. He lifted his brush. The first stroke was clumsy. The second flowed. By the third, he was no longer thinking. His breath and his brush moved together, one motion, one moment. The stream outside kept murmuring, as if in rhythm with his hand. Hours passed unnoticed. By the time the sun reached its peak, the canvas was no longer empty. Mountains rose in mist, trees bowed in wind, water shimmered in motion. Some lines were crooked, others soft. None were perfect, and that made them real. When Ayu finished, he looked at his work and smiled for the first time in months. He whispered, "There you are," not to the painting, but to himself. You breathe in. Imagine sitting in that quiet studio. The smell of ink and paper fills the air. You can hear the brush glide softly over the canvas. Each stroke is a breath, imperfect, alive, complete in its incompletion. You breathe out. Feel your shoulders drop, your expectations soften. How much of your own peace have you traded for the illusion of perfect control? How many moments have you postponed, waiting to feel ready? Perfection is not readiness. It is paralysis. Zen teaches, the cherry blossom is most beautiful the day before it falls, because beauty lies not in permanence, but in the fleeting shimmer of what is. The painter Ayu kept that imperfect first stroke forever. He never painted over it. He told his students later, "That line reminds me to begin, even if I do not know how." Over the years, his paintings changed. They became simpler, freer. Sometimes he would leave large empty spaces in his work, white gaps that others thought unfinished. But he said, that is where the wind lives. And those who looked closely always felt the presence of something vast and gentle moving through the emptiness. You breathe again. You realize the same truth applies to your life. You're not here to finish your story. You are here to live it, to let the brush move, to let the ink flow, to let the line wobble. Even the pauses, the wrong turns, the unfinished dreams, they are part of the painting. Without them, there would be no space for light to enter. The sound of the stream returns to your awareness. You hear it now as Au did, continuous, effortless, unconcerned with perfection. It simply flows. And in its flow, there is grace. When you stop trying to be flawless, you become whole. Wholeness is not about completeness. It is about presence. The brush moves again in your mind, in your breath, in the quiet pulse of this moment. Every stroke of your life belongs to the same canvas. There are no mistakes, only motion, only life endlessly painting itself. The temple bell rings somewhere in the valley, its tone long and soft. Au sits down his brush and bows to the canvas. He whispers, "Thank you for being unfinished." The sound fades. You sit in that stillness, calm and awake. And slowly, the edges of your own perfection begin to dissolve. Peace is not in finishing, but in beginning without fear. When you let go of perfection, creation becomes meditation, and even imperfection becomes sacred. Story 8. The Gardener and the Falling Leaves. Autumn had arrived. The mountain air was crisp, and a scent of pine and damp soil lingered through the temple gardens. Every path was covered in gold and rust. Layers of fallen leaves whispering beneath each footstep. The morning sun rested on the moss-covered stones, gentle and pale. In the center of the temple garden, an old gardener named Sora worked silently with his bamboo broom. He had tended these gardens for 40 years, pruning, watering, sweeping, and watching. He knew every rock, every pond, every tree by heart. And every year, when autumn came, the same thing happened. The leaves fell faster than he could sweep them. He would rake the courtyard clean, and by the time he reached the other side, the wind would scatter more leaves behind him. Each gust seemed to undo his effort, yet he never complained. He simply smiled, bowed his head, and began again. One morning, a young monk named Ado stood watching him from the temple steps. The boy was new to the monastery, full of energy, discipline, and questions. After a while, he walked over and said, "Master Sora, why do you keep sweeping? You know the wind will only bring more leaves." The old gardener paused, leaning on his broom. He looked at the boy and smiled. "Ah," he said, "I sweep not to keep the garden clean, but to keep my heart clear." Ado frowned. "But what's the point if it never stays clean?" Sora looked around at the trees swaying gently, the leaves dancing in the air, the sunlight flickering across the pond. Then he said, "The garden is never meant to stay clean. It's meant to stay alive." He continued sweeping, slow and rhythmic, as though each stroke of the broom were a breath. Ado stood watching, uncertain but quiet now. He noticed something. The sound of the broom against the stones was like a soft whisper. Each stroke left a temporary path of clarity before the wind covered it again. Sora said, "People think peace means control, but peace is really harmony. The tree lets go because it trusts the spring will come again. The leaf falls because it has learned that letting go is part of living." Ado asked, "And what if the tree doesn't want to let go?" The gardener smiled. "Then the frost will teach it." That answer lingered in the air, not cruelly, but truthfully. Nature always teaches, whether gently or through change. Sora gestured for Ado to pick up another broom. "Come," he said. "Help me." Together, they swept in silence. The breeze moved through the branches, sending another flurry of golden leaves spiraling around them. Some landed on their shoulders, some in their hair. Ado laughed, brushing them off. Sora did not. He let them rest where they fell. After a while, the boy stopped sweeping. He watched the gardener's hands, steady, patient, graceful. He realized that the old man wasn't trying to finish the work. He was simply being part of the rhythm. The broom moved, the leaves fell, the wind blew, and he smiled. "Do you ever get tired?" Ado asked softly. Sora nodded. "Yes, sometimes. But I've learned that even tiredness is part of the garden. When I rest, the wind continues. When I return, the wind pauses. It's all the same dance." As the day passed, the sun lowered and shadows lengthened across the courtyard. The garden was half swept, half covered in leaves, a blend of order and chaos, of effort and surrender. It looked alive. The boy stepped back and said, "It's beautiful, even unfinished." The gardener smiled. "It always was." That evening, Sora set the brooms against the wall and stood at the gate, looking out at the trees glowing in the last light of dusk. He whispered, "Each leaf knows when to fall. So must we." You breathe in. You imagine yourself standing there with him, surrounded by falling leaves. The air is cool, the colors warm, the scent of the earth deep and comforting. You watch a leaf detach from its branch, spinning, floating, soft, landing silently on the ground. There's no sadness in it, only acceptance. You feel that same softness within yourself. You breathe out. Think of what you've been holding on to, perhaps a plan, a memory, a relationship, or an identity that no longer fits. See it as a leaf. Beautiful, once full of life, now ready to return to the soil. You don't have to throw it away. Just let it fall. Let gravity take care of the rest. In Zen, they say, leaves do not resist the wind. To resist life's seasons is to break. To bend and release is to stay alive. When spring returns, the trees will grow again, not because they held on, but because they let go. Every ending prepares the soil for something new. As the moon rose over the temple that night, Sora sat beneath a maple tree, sipping tea. The courtyard was covered again, a golden ocean under moonlight. He smiled and whispered, "Perfect." Then he closed his eyes, listening to the quiet rustle of the earth breathing. Ado watched from the doorway, understanding at last. Peace was not in the absence of falling leaves. It was in the grace of sweeping them again and again, without complaint, without needing to finish. You sit now in that same stillness. Leaves drift slowly around you, like thoughts coming and going. You do not need to catch them, nor chase them. Let each fall, rest, and disappear into silence. The garden of your mind clears itself. When morning comes again, you may find that the wind has changed, that something within you has loosened like a tree after autumn. And when you rise, lighter and freer, you will understand what the gardener knew all along. Peace is participation, not control. Letting go is not an act of loss, it is an act of trust. When you allow life to change, you remain part of its natural beauty. Just as the trees let go of their leaves, the soul must let go of what no longer belongs, so that new growth may begin. Story 9. The Warrior and the Mirror. The morning mist clung to the valley like smoke after battle. In the courtyard of a mountain temple, the sound of a wooden sword striking echoed through the fog. Thwack paws thwack. A young warrior named Daigo trained there each day. His movements sharp, eyes focused, breath loud. He was undefeated in combat. People called him the Blade without doubt. But doubt, like shadow, always hides behind the light. And in Daigo's heart, it was growing. He had come to the temple to challenge the old Zen master who lived there, a man said to have once been a warrior himself, though now he wore only gray robes and tended a garden of stones. Daigo wanted to test his discipline. He believed that if he could defeat the master in spirit, he would finally become invincible. When he arrived, he found the old man sitting before a small pond, raking lines in the gravel around it. "Are you the master called Shone?" Daigo asked. Shone looked up, his eyes calm as moonlight. "I'm only a gardener now," he said. Daigo planted his sword into the ground. "I've come to learn the secret of victory." Shone smiled faintly. "Then lay down your sword." Daigo hesitated. "I will not." "Then you will learn nothing," said the master. He pointed to the pond beside him. "Look there. What do you see?" Daigo stepped forward. He saw his reflection on the surface, proud, strong, unyielding. He said, "I see a warrior." Shone nodded. Then, with the tip of his rake, he disturbed the water. Ripples spread across the surface, breaking the reflection into fragments. "Now what do you see?" Daigo frowned. "Nothing but distortion." The master smiled. "That is what pride does to the mind. It distorts everything it touches. You came here to conquer. But tell me, what remains to conquer when the enemy is your own reflection?" Daigo said nothing. The master's words stung deeper than any wound. Shone rose slowly. He handed the rake to Daigo. "Rake the sand." Daigo began roughly, dragging deep lines through the garden. His strokes were harsh, uneven. The sand piled in angry ridges. The master watched quietly for a while, then said, "You rake as you fight, with tension. Your lines reveal your mind." Daigo stopped. His breath was heavy, his shoulders tight. Shone continued, "You think victory will make you free. But every victory only feeds the cage of ego. You win, you fear losing. You climb, you fear falling. Tell me, warrior, when will you rest?" Daigo stared at the rake in his hands. He realized he had never rested. Even in sleep, his dreams were duels. Shone said, "Lay down the rake. Go to the pond again." Daigo knelt by the water. The ripples had stilled. He saw his reflection once more, but now it looked tired. He whispered, "Who am I if not the blade?" Shone answered softly, "You are the hand that holds it." Silence settled like snow. The words sank deep. Daigo felt his throat tighten, not from shame, but from release. He lifted his sword from the ground, stared at it for a long time, then placed it gently beside the pond. He bowed to the master. "Teach me to see clearly," he said, shone poor tea for both of them. As steam rose between them, he said, "Clarity begins when you stop polishing the mirror. The mind is already clear, it is pride that clouds it. You keep trying to reflect perfection, but a mirror that reflects everything shows nothing." Daigo frowned. "Then what should I do?" "Break it," Shone said simply. The warrior blinked. "Break the mirror?" Shone nodded. "Yes. Let go of your reflection. When there is no image to protect, you can finally see what is real." Daigo sat quietly. He understood, but understanding wasn't enough. So he rose, walked to the pond, and struck the surface with his palm. Water splashed up, scattering his reflection into 1,000 drops of light. The master smiled. "That is the first honest strike you have ever made." Daigo laughed, a sound that surprised even him. He bowed low. "Thank you, master." From that day, he stayed at the temple. He no longer trained with his sword. He raked the garden instead, slow, careful, listening to the rhythm of his breath. He no longer sought victory, he sought balance. One morning, months later, a band of soldiers came to the temple. They demanded tribute, threatening violence. Daigo stepped forward, unarmed. The leader sneered, "Are you not the blade without doubt?" Daigo smiled gently. "Once, but I learned that doubt is what keeps a blade sharp." The soldiers laughed, but did not attack. Something in his stillness unsettled them. They left without another word. Shone said afterward, "When the mirror of ego breaks, no enemy can find his reflection." You breathe in. Imagine standing before your own reflection, the image you try to protect, the identity you polish, the pride you defend. Feel how much energy it takes to keep that reflection uncracked. You breathe out. Imagine striking the surface, letting the image shatter, not in destruction, but in freedom. You don't lose yourself, you lose the mask. Behind it, you find peace. Zen teaches, when the mirror breaks, the sky is reflected in every shard. When pride falls away, truth is everywhere. Now you sit in that quiet temple garden. The pond ripples softly, and the rake lines curve in calm, balanced waves. The master is gone, the warrior is gone, and what remains is only the sound of wind in the pines, the echo of stillness. You bow to that stillness. You breathe once more. No armor, no titles, no battles left to fight, only presence. Ego builds mirrors, awareness breaks them. When you stop defending your reflection and face your true self, humility becomes your greatest strength, and peace follows naturally. Story 10. The Old Woman and the River Stone. The morning air was cool and clear. Mist drifted lazily above the river that wound through the valley like a ribbon of glass. On its banks sat an old woman named Hannah, her back curved, her hands rough from years of labor. Every morning, before the village woke, she came to this spot with her woven basket. The basket was empty when she arrived and full when she left, not with gold or food, but with stones. Smooth, round river stones that glistened in the morning light. She would wash them gently, dry them on her shawl, and place them one by one along the temple path on her way home. Nobody knew exactly why she did this. Some said it was superstition. Some said she was senile. But the monks never stopped her. They said, "The path is cleaner when she's been there." One morning, a young traveler saw her kneeling by the river, lifting stones with trembling hands. He watched for a while, puzzled, then asked, "Old mother, why do you carry stones? They are heavy and useless." Hannah smiled, her face lined like folded paper. She said, "Are they useless? Look closely." The traveler picked one up. It was smooth and cool, shaped by years of water's patience. Still, he frowned. "It's only a rock." The woman nodded. "Yes, yet the river carried it all this way, from the mountain to this valley. Each day, the river gives a new shine. I take them and lay them along the temple path, so the traveler's feet find steadiness." The man said, "But nobody notices that." Her smile widened. "That is why it is good." He looked confused. "Wouldn't you rather do something people remember?" She shook her head. "When the heart gives quietly, it never runs dry. When it gives for reward, it becomes a well that empties." The traveler sat beside her, watching the water flow over the stones. He asked, "Do you never get tired?" She nodded. "Of course. Some mornings I think, why do this again? But then I see the river, still flowing, still giving. And I remember, the river does not ask if someone is watching. It just moves." She picked up another stone and held out to him. "Here, take this one. Feel how heavy it is." He did. "Now," she said, "put it back gently." He lowered it into the water. It sank, then settled among the others, the current brushing softly over it. "See," she whispered, "it belongs again. When we release what we hold, it returns to its place. That's how kindness works." They sat in silence for a long while. The river murmured its endless lesson. Everything that flows lives. Everything that clings stiffens. The traveler finally said, "I think I understand." Hannah smiled faintly. "Understanding is easy. Keep practicing when no one is looking." When she rose to leave, she picked up her basket, light this time, and walked slowly toward the temple. The traveler followed from a distance. He watched her stop every few steps to place a stone along the path, pressing it gently into the soil. Later, when the monks walked to their morning prayers, their feet found those stones, solid, cool, grounding. They did not know who had placed them, but they bowed in gratitude anyway to whoever had cared enough to do so. Days turned into months, months into years. Hannah's body grew weaker, but her habit never changed. Even when her legs shook, she made the slow walk to the river each morning. Some villagers offered to help. She would only smile and say, "The river helps me already." Then one winter, the snow came early. The path to the river grew icy, the water too cold to touch. The villagers told her to rest. She nodded, but went anyway. When she didn't return by evening, they searched for her. They found her by the riverbank, sitting quietly, her hands resting in her lap, her basket beside her, half full of stones, half full of snow. Her face was peaceful. She had fallen asleep watching the river she loved. The monks buried her near the temple gate, beside the path she had paved for decades. That spring, when the snow melted, something remarkable happened. Small green shoots began growing between the stones she had laid. The path blossomed with tiny white flowers. No one had planted them. They had simply found her kindness and bloomed there. You breathe in. You imagine yourself walking that path now. The soft earth beneath your feet, the smooth stones steadying each step. You see the flowers blooming along the edges, the sunlight glinting on the river beyond. You feel a quiet gratitude for a person you never met. You breathe out. You realize that every gentle act, no matter how small, travels further than you can see. Like water flowing over stone, kindness shapes the world without asking for credit. In Zen, they say, the gift must forget the giver, because only when you stop claiming your goodness does it become pure. Think of a time you gave something love, time, effort, and felt unseen. Maybe your kindness was ignored. Maybe your care went unreturned. Let that go now. The river saw it. The world remembers in ways you cannot measure. You breathe again. The current inside you moves freely. Compassion doesn't have to be loud or rewarded. It just has to flow. That night, the monks lit a small candle by Hannah's resting place. The flame flickered in the wind, reflected in the stone she had laid. The head monk whispered, "Even stones can carry love." The candle burned quietly until dawn, its light dancing over the path. Every traveler who passed that morning felt its warmth, though none knew why their hearts softened. And so, the river kept flowing. The path remained steady, and Hannah's kindness lived on, unseen but unforgotten, like the river itself. True compassion asks for nothing in return. When you give without attachment to outcome, your kindness becomes timeless, flowing quietly through the world long after you are gone. Story 11. The Monk and the Caged Bird. The morning light filtered through paper windows, soft and pale like milk poured into tea. In the small garden behind the temple, an old monk named Run sat beside a bamboo cage. Inside it was a tiny songbird, golden feathers, black eyes bright as dew. It sang each morning as Ren brewed his tea. The sound was delicate, like sunlight turned into music. The bird had been given to him years ago by a traveling merchant. At first, Ren had refused the gift, but the merchant insisted, saying, "It will bring joy to your mornings." And so it had. The bird's song became part of Ren's meditation, rising and falling with his breath. He grew fond of it, perhaps too fond. One day, a young monk named Nari entered the garden and watched as Ren cleaned the cage. "Master," he said, "the bird sings beautifully. Does it not wish to fly?" Ren looked up. "The cage is open during the day," he said. "It chooses to stay." Nari frowned. "Does it stay out of choice or habit?" Ren didn't answer. He only looked at the bird, small, perfect, still. That evening, a windstorm swept through the valley. Leaves scattered across the temple roof, and the bamboo cage rattled against the wall. Run rushed to bring it inside. The bird flapped in panic, its wings striking the bars again and again. Ren held the cage close to his chest, whispering, "It's all right, little one, I'm here." When the storm passed, the garden was calm again. But something in Ren's heart was unsettled. He saw the tiny dents in the bird's feathers where it had struck the cage. He realized that his care had become confinement. That night, he could not sleep. He sat before the cage, watching the bird sleep, chest rising and falling like a small wave. He whispered, "Forgive me. I kept you safe, but not free." The next morning, Ren opened the cage wide and carried it to the temple gate. The bird hesitated, blinking in the sunlight. Ren whispered, "Go on. The sky is waiting." But the bird did not move. It hopped once, then twice, then perched on the edge of the cage. Wren's heart ached, both hoping it would stay and praying it would leave. Finally, the bird leapt. Its wings caught the wind, rising higher, higher, until it vanished into the brightness of the sky. Wren watched until it disappeared. His hands trembled, but his face was peaceful. Nari came running. "Master, you let it go." Wren nodded. "The song was never mine," he said. "It belonged to the sky." For days after, the garden was silent. The mornings felt hollow at first, too still, too quiet. Wren missed the flutter of wings, the melody that used to greet the dawn. But slowly, he began to notice new sounds. The rustle of bamboo leaves, the hum of insects, the soft ringing of temple bells far away. Silence, too, had its song. One morning, while pouring tea, Wren heard a faint chirp outside. He looked up and smiled. There, on the branch of the persimmon tree, sat the same golden bird. It sang, freer, louder, more radiant than ever. And when the song ended, it flew away again. Nari, who had been watching, whispered, "It came back." Wren nodded. "Yes, love does not bind, it invites." He turned to the young monk and said, "When you love something, hold it as you would water. Cup it gently. If you squeeze too tightly, it slips away." That day, Wren removed the cage from the garden and placed it in the temple storeroom. He left its door open. Whenever he passed by, he would smile at it, not as a symbol of loss, but as a reminder of the lesson it had taught. You breathe in. You imagine the garden, soft sunlight, the empty cage, the sound of a free bird echoing in the distance. You feel the same tenderness that Wren felt, the pull between love and letting go. You breathe out. You understand that love does not mean possession. True love is freedom shared. We often say mine, my friend, my partner, my child, my dream. But the truth is, nothing truly belongs to us. Not people, not moments, not even our breath. We borrow everything, and life asks us to return it when the time comes. In Zen, they say, when you open your hand, both the bird and the sky are free. Think now of someone or something you have clung to out of fear, love, or habit. You may have held too tightly, believing you were protecting them or yourself. But holding always becomes a cage. Breathe deeply. Picture yourself opening the door, not as loss, but as trust. Let the air move. Let the sky take what belongs to it. The heart that lets go never truly empties. It expands. That evening, Wren sat beneath the same tree and sipped his tea. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Fly far, little one. The sky is wide enough for both of us." And in that moment, the peace he felt was not the peace of silence. It was the peace of space. The kind of peace that love leaves behind when it is finally free. The moon rose above the temple roof. The bamboo leaves swayed gently in the night breeze. The empty cage glimmered faintly in the moonlight, not as a prison, but as a reminder. What is free remains connected. What is held becomes distant. You sit now in that same moonlight. You feel a space open inside your chest, wide, clear still. You realize that letting go does not end love. It purifies it. What you love deeply never truly leaves. It just changes form like a song that becomes wind. Love without possession is the highest form of compassion. When you free what you love, you discover that nothing truly leaves, It only returns in a different way, lighter and purer than before. Story 12. The Potter and the Cracked Cup. The sun had barely risen when the potter's wheel began to spin. Its low hum blended with the morning wind that carried the scent of damp clay. In a small workshop by the river, a woman named May shaped cups, bowls, and vases with slow, careful hands. Each piece was unique, molded by touch, guided by patience. Her shelves were lined with porcelain, smooth, elegant, perfect. She had built her reputation on flawlessness. No crack, no blemish, no uneven line ever left her kiln. People came from faraway towns to buy her work. They said, "May's cups never break." But one day, as she was removing a batch from the kiln, she heard a faint ping. When she looked closer, one cup had cracked along the rim, a thin, jagged line, barely visible yet enough to ruin her pride. She frowned, tracing the crack with her fingertip. The cup had been meant for a temple offering. Now it was worthless. She set it aside, meaning to throw it away later. That evening, a wandering monk passed by her shop. He bowed politely and asked for a cup of water. May, distracted and tired, handed him the cracked cup. He held it carefully, noticing the flaw. When he finished drinking, he smiled. "This cup," he said, "holds water beautifully." May looked at him, puzzled. "But it's broken," she said. "I can't sell it." The monk nodded. "Then it's free." He set the cup down, bowed again, and continued his journey. That night, May couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the monk's words. "It holds water beautifully." She realized she had spent her life making objects perfect, but never seeing their spirit. The next morning, she took the cracked cup and placed it on her table. Sunlight streamed through the window and caught the line along the rim. It glimmered faintly, like a scar turned to gold. She whispered, "You are still whole." Inspired, she began to experiment. She melted gold powder into resin and carefully filled the crack. The gold traced the fracture like lightning frozen in time. When it hardened, she held the cup to the light. It shone. Word spread through the village. People came to see this flawed cup that now glowed with beauty. Some brought their own broken pieces and asked me to mend them. Soon, her workshop was filled not with perfection, but with resurrection. Each repaired piece told a story. A bowl cracked during a wedding feast, a vase shattered during an earthquake, a teapot dropped by trembling hands in grief. May mended them all, tracing each wound with gold. When a young apprentice asked why she used gold instead of hiding the cracks, she said, "Because broken things deserve to shine too." She called this practice kintsugi, to join with gold. And in time, people began to understand that beauty was not in flawlessness, but in transformation. You breathe in. Imagine holding that cup, smooth yet scarred, light catching the gold like morning sunlight on water. You feel warmth radiate through your palms. You see your own life reflected in its surface, the cracks, the losses, the pain, the healing. All of it part of the same shape. You breathe out. You realize that you, too, have been trying to throw away what was never lost. You've called yourself broken when you were really becoming art. In Zen, they say, the flaw is where the soul enters. Because only through imperfection does life become human, tender, and real. May's repaired pottery became famous across the province, but fame no longer mattered to her. One day, when a monk returned to the village, She presented the golden-rimmed cup to him. He smiled, holding it up to the sunlight. "I see you learn from the crack," he said. May bowed deeply. "I learned that perfection is brittle," she replied. "But kindness toward ourselves, toward our wounds, is unbreakable." The monk nodded. "Then your work is complete." He handed the cup back to her. "Keep it, so you never forget." From then on, May began to teach others, not how to make flawless things, but how to repair them with love. She told her students, "When you mend something with gold, you honor the time it has lived, not the mistake it has made." Her hands grew old, her fingers stiff, but her eyes remained bright, filled with the quiet joy of someone who no longer feared imperfection. She understood that to live was to crack, to heal, and to glow again. You breathe again. Picture your own cracks, the mistakes, heartbreaks, regrets, moments when you thought you had shattered beyond repair. Now imagine filling them with light, not hiding them, but honoring them. Let the light trace every line, every wound, every scar. Feel how beautiful you become when you stop pretending to be unbroken. Zen wisdom says, "The cup is only beautiful when it has held tea," meaning the marks of experience make us real. We are shaped by what we've carried, even if it leaves traces behind. So do not fear the cracks. They are proof that you have lived deeply. They are the gold lines through which your spirit shines. As the evening settles in, you see May sitting by the river, holding her golden cup. The sunset glows on its rim, the reflection rippling across the water. She smiles quietly and whispers, "Thank you for breaking." The river flows on. The light fades, leaving only the sound of water and wind, soft, endless, whole. True beauty lives in imperfection. When you accept your cracks instead of hiding them, you turn pain into strength and brokenness into art. Story 13. The Bamboo and the Storm. Night had fallen over the valley. The sky was restless, thick clouds gathering, wind sharpening its voice through the mountains. The bamboo grove behind the temple swayed in the darkness, leaves whispering like thousands of tiny prayers. Inside the meditation hall, candles flickered in the draft. The monks sat in stillness. Outside, the storm began. At first, only a drizzle, then rain like curtains of glass, heavy and relentless. Thunder rolled over the hills, echoing through the temple walls. The bamboo grove bent and groaned under the weight of the wind. Each stalk swayed, bowed low, then sprang back again. One young monk named Riku couldn't focus. His mind jumped with every flash of lightning. He watched through the open doorway as the storm battered the grove. He turned to the old abbot beside him and whispered, "Master, the wind will destroy the bamboo." The abbot smiled faintly without opening his eyes. "No, Riku, the bamboo will outlive the storm." Riku frowned. "How?" "The oak by the gate is stronger, but it already lost a branch." The abbot finally opened his eyes. "Because the oak resists," he said. "The bamboo yields." Riku didn't understand. To him, bending looked like weakness. Strength was standing firm, wasn't it? When morning came, the storm had passed. The valley steamed with new sunlight, and the air smelled of rain and soil. Riku ran outside. The oak by the gate lay broken. Its thick branch snapped clean off. But the bamboo grove stood tall again, shining with droplets like silver beads. He touched one stalk, cool, wet, alive. It leaned easily under his hand, then returned upright. He realized what the abbot had meant. Later that day, the abbot asked him to walk into the forest. They went together in silence, sandals sinking softly into the damp ground. Birds began to sing again, tentative but bright. The abbot stopped among the bamboo and said, "Watch closely." He pressed his palm against the stalk and pushed gently. It bent but did not break. "When the wind blows," he said, "the bamboo does not fight. It listens. It bows. It moves with what comes. Then, when the wind is gone, it stands tall again. Not because it is unshaken, but because it never resisted." Rika nodded slowly. He said, "So to be strong, we must learn a bend?" The abbot smiled. "Yes, the body that stiffens in fear shatters. The mind that resists life's storms breaks. But the one who yields, who flows, that one endures." He continued walking, touching each stalk as he passed, whispering as if to old friends, "The storm is not the enemy. Resistance is." As they returned to the temple, Riku saw villagers repairing their roofs and clearing fallen branches. Some complained, some cursed the storm, but one old woman swept her flooded doorway, humming softly, as if the rain had simply cleaned her world. The abbot pointed to her. "There," he said, "she is bamboo." That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, Riku sat in meditation again. He heard the memory of the storm in his breath, the rise and fall, the strength and surrender. For the first time, he didn't try to silence his thoughts. He let them come and go like the wind, bowing to each before letting it pass. He understood now that calm is not the absence of storms, but the skill of moving with them. The bamboo had taught him how to live. You breathe in. You imagine yourself standing in that same grove, the scent of rain still fresh, droplets clinging to the leaves. You feel the gentle sway of bamboo around you, moving together, never resisting, never breaking. You realize that even as the wind pushes, there is grace in yielding. You breathe out. Think of the storms in your own life, the arguments, losses, disappointments, changes you didn't choose. Notice how tightly you try to hold your ground. Now imagine softening, bending, not giving up, but allowing life to move through you instead of against you. In Zen, they say, "The willow bends with the wind, the stiff pine snaps." Resilience is not hardness, it's flexibility. When you stop insisting that things stay still, you discover a peace that moves with the world, not against it. That night, the bamboo grove swayed again in the cool evening breeze. This time, Riku didn't worry. He smiled, whispering to the wind, "Thank you for teaching me how to bow." The moon rose, round and white, shining through the gaps in the leaves. The grove shimmered, thousands of slender stems breathing together, each one bending, each one rising, each one alive. The sound they made was not of struggle, but of music, a soft rhythm between wind and wood, between surrender and strength. You breathe once more, deeply. You feel that same rhythm inside your chest, the heart bending and rising with every breath. You understand now, you are not the storm. You are the bamboo, and you are still standing. True strength is found in softness. When you stop resisting the winds of change and learn to bend with life, You do not fall, you flow. Story 14. The Fisherman and the Silent Sea. The sea was still that morning, unnaturally still. No wind, no ripples, no sound except the slow creak of the wooden boat rocking in place. A fisherman named Kaido sat alone in the vast blue, his oars resting beside him. He had been out since dawn, and not a single fish had risen. The horizon was endless. The sky and water had merged into one shade of silver gray. It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. He looked around and muttered, "Even the sea sleeps today." Kaido had been fishing this coast for 30 years. He knew its moods, its calm, its rage, its generosity. But this silence felt strange. He cast his line again, waiting, the rope trailing into still water. Minutes passed, then hours. Nothing. He frowned and said aloud, "Did I anger the sea?" The water gave no answer. It only reflected his face, tired, aging, uncertain. As the sun climbed higher, Kaido grew restless. He drummed his fingers on the side of the boat, muttering, "I must do something. Move, row, shout, anything." But when he dipped his oars into the water, even the ripples seemed reluctant to form. The sea swallowed every sound, every movement, until there was nothing left but stillness. Finally, Kaido sighed and set his oars down. He leaned back and stared at the sky. "I surrender," he whispered. The words felt heavy at first, then strangely light. He closed his eyes and let the boat drift. The sun warmed his face. The salt air clung to his skin. With nothing to fight, nothing to force, he began to breathe in rhythm with the slow rocking of the boat. Time dissolved. He didn't know if it had been minutes or hours when something inside him shifted. A deep calm, like the moment before sleep, but more awake than he'd ever been. He realized that for years he had fished not only for food, but for control. Every cast of the net had been a demand. "Give me what I want." Now, for the first time, he asked for nothing. He just listened. And in that stillness, he heard it, a faint sound beneath the surface. Not the splash of a fish, but something softer. The pulse of the sea itself, a slow, deep heartbeat. He leaned over the edge of the boat. The water was clear, revealing his reflection, rippled, shimmering, alive. He whispered, "Ah, so you were never silent. I just wasn't quiet enough to hear." He dipped his hand into the water, feeling its coolness. It felt like touching infinity. He smiled. It was the first true smile in months. Just then, a small fish brushed against his hand, quick, silver, and gone again. Kaido laughed softly. He didn't try to catch it. He just watched the circles it left behind expand outward until they disappeared. That evening, as the sun sank low, painting the sea in shades of fire and gold, he began to row home. His net was still empty, but his heart was full. He whispered, "Today, the sea taught me patience." When he reached the shore, his wife met him, concerned. "Did the sea abandon you?" she asked. He smiled gently. "No," he said. "It was only teaching me how to listen." The next morning, Kaido went out again. The sea was alive once more, waves moving, gulls calling, light dancing on the water. He cast his net, but without expectation. He said quietly, "If you give, I thank you. If not, I thank you still." By the time he returned that afternoon, his boat overflowed with fish. But even then, he did not shout with joy. He bowed to the water and whispered, "You owe me nothing." From that day on, Whenever the sea grew silent again, he no longer cursed or feared it. He would rest his oars, close his eyes, and let the stillness become his teacher once more. You breathe in. Imagine yourself sitting in that same small boat, surrounded by an endless horizon. No wind, no sound, just breath. At first, the silence feels heavy, too empty to bear. But as you settle into it, you begin to hear subtle things. Your heartbeat, your breath, the gentle creak of wood, the soft pulse of the world. You realize silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. You breathe out. Feel how life continues even when nothing seems to happen. How peace appears not when you force stillness, but when you stop disturbing it. In Zen, they say, "Do not ask the moon to move, become still, and you will see it reflected." Meaning, the answers come not by chasing them, but by becoming quiet enough for them to appear. The fisherman's boat is your mind. The oars are your effort. The sea is life itself. You cannot command it, but you can learn its rhythm. When you release the need for control, life reveals itself effortlessly. And even in the quietest moments, you will find that something beautiful is always moving beneath the surface. As the sun disappears beyond the horizon, Kaido's small boat drifts once more. He watches the stars appear, one by one, their light reflected perfectly on the calm water. He whispers to the sea, "Thank you for not answering when I shouted. You were speaking all along." The waves lap gently against the wood, like the heartbeat of the world. And the fisherman, once restless, now belongs completely to the silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is fullness beyond words. When you stop forcing answers and learn to listen deeply, life reveals its wisdom in the quietest moments. Story 15. The Monk and the Shadow. The moon was full over the mountains, and the courtyard stones glowed silver under its light. The temple was quiet. Only the soft rustle of wind through pine needles filled the night. A young monk named Sojin walked alone, his lantern swaying beside him. For weeks, he had been haunted, not by ghosts, but by his own thoughts. Every time he sat to meditate, memories rose. Anger, jealousy, small cruelties he'd once committed and never forgiven himself for. He tried to push them away, but they clung tighter. Tonight, he couldn't sleep. He paced the courtyard, his lantern casting long shadows against the walls. When he turned, he saw his shadow following, dark, distorted, stretching behind him. He frowned. Even now, it will not leave me. He tried walking faster, turning corners, stepping into the moonlight, but the shadow followed everywhere. Frustrated, he whispered, "Why won't you let me be?" Then a voice answered, not from outside, but from within, "Because I am you." Sojin froze. He dropped his lantern, and the flame sputtered out. Darkness swallowed him whole. He stood still, trembling. His heart pounded. He whispered, "Who are you?" The voice came again, gentle but firm. "The part you keep running from." He looked down at the ground, but there was no shadow now, only night. The voice said, "You meditate to find peace, but you reject the pieces of yourself that need it most. You chase light and call me evil, but I am only your pain asking to be seen." Sojin sank to his knees. He whispered, "I am ashamed of you." The voice answered, Then you are ashamed of your own humanity. Tears filled his eyes. For the first time, he felt the exhaustion of years spent pretending to be pure. He realized that enlightenment wasn't about rising above his flaws. It was about embracing them fully. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" To be held, the voice said. He closed his eyes and breathed. For a long while, there was only silence. Then, slowly, a warmth spread through his chest. Not the warmth of pride, but of acceptance. He saw, in his mind's eye, his shadow kneeling before him, trembling, afraid, yet familiar. He reached out and embraced it. The moment he did, the night brightened. The moon emerged from behind a cloud, casting a soft glow across the courtyard. The shadow returned, but it no longer looked threatening. It stood quietly beside him, whole calm, part of him once again. When morning came, Sojin told the abbot what had happened. The old man listened, eyes closed, nodding slowly. He said, "You have discovered what most seekers spend lifetimes avoiding. The light does not destroy the dark. It reveals it." Sojin asked, "How do I live with my shadow now?" The abbot smiled. "You don't need to live with it," he said. "You live as it, whole, balanced, aware. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the place where compassion begins." From that day, Sojin's meditation changed. He no longer tried to silence his thoughts or purify his mind. He let the pain, guilt, and anger come, and he sat with them, breathing softly, saying, "I see you. I understand." Slowly, they lost their power. The darkness became less like an enemy and more like a quiet friend who needed company. You breathe in. Imagine sitting in that courtyard under the full moon. The air is cool still. Your shadow stretches gently behind you. You no longer turn away. You sit with it, both of you breathing as one. You breathe out. You feel something loosen, a quiet forgiveness unfolding in your chest. You realize that you've been at war with yourself for too long. Peace does not mean eliminating your flaws. It means holding them in light without fear. In Zen, they say the lotus blooms in muddy water. Without mud, there is no flower. Without shadow, there is no light. Think of the parts of yourself you've rejected, the regrets, the mistakes, the memories that make you wince. Breathe into them now. Do not fix them. Just see them gently. They are not monsters. They are wounds asking to be loved. The monk Sojin spent many years teaching this lesson to others. Whenever a student confessed shame or anger, he would take them outside at night and point to the moon. "See how it never shines on only one side," he'd say. "Even the moon keeps its darkness close." He would then add softly, "When you stop judging your shadow, you stop fearing the night." One evening, many years later, as he grew old and gray, Sojin walked again through that same courtyard. The moon was full, the air calm. He saw his shadow stretching behind him, steady, patient, beautiful. He bowed to it, and as he did, the wind carried the scent of pine, and the night whispered softly through the leaves, "You are whole." You breathe once more. You feel that same stillness in yourself, the union of light and shadow no longer at odds. You understand now that healing is not perfection, it's honesty. Your shadow will always walk with you, but now it no longer follows behind. It walks beside you in peace. To make peace with yourself, you must stop running from your shadow. When you embrace your darkness with compassion, you become whole, and your light shines more gently, more truthfully than ever before. Story 16. The Monk and a Mountain Path. Dawn touched the peaks with silver. Mist wound through the pines, and the stones underfoot were cool with dew. An old monk named Ryusho tightened his sandals, adjusted his pack, and began to climb. He had set out before sunrise, telling no one. He wanted to reach the temple at the top of the sacred mountain, a place said to hold the final truth. He had been meditating and studying for 40 years, yet he felt something was still missing. He believed that if he could only reach the summit, he would find the peace that eluded him. The path wound upward in silence. Each turn revealed new clouds, new slopes, new exhaustion. He met a farmer carrying wood down the trail. The man bowed and said, "Where are you going, venerable one?" "To find enlightenment," Ryusho answered. The farmer smiled. "Ah, be careful not to miss it while you walk." The monk frowned at the riddle and continued on. The air thinned. His breath grew heavy. He walked for hours, then days. He passed waterfalls that glittered like liquid glass and forests that smelled of rain and moss. Still, he hurried, eyes fixed on the unseen peak. On the third day, he reached a clearing. A small hut stood there, smoke rising from its chimney. An old woman sat outside, peeling apples. She looked up and said, "Rest, traveler." "I cannot," Ryusho said. "I must reach the summit before nightfall." The woman chuckled. "You monks are always climbing. Sit. The mountain will still be here tomorrow." He hesitated, then sighed and sat. She handed him a cup of tea, simple, fragrant, warm. They drank in silence. When he finished, he stood to leave. The woman asked, "Did the tea taste good?" "Yes," Ryusho said. "Then you have tasted enlightenment," she replied. He blinked, startled, but when he looked again, she was gone. Only the cup remained, steaming gently in the morning air. He shook his head and kept walking, but her words followed him up the path. He walked slower now, noticing the crunch of gravel under his feet, the sound of wind combing through the trees, the rhythm of his own breath. For the first time, he wasn't rushing. He was seeing. He began to realize that the mountain itself was teaching him. The patience of stone, the humility of roots, the acceptance of clouds. Everything was already saying what he had been trying to hear. At dusk, he finally reached the summit. There was no grand temple, no shining revelation, only open sky. The sun was setting, painting the horizon gold and crimson. The wind touched his face like a whisper. He laughed, quietly, freely, without reason. He sat down, legs crossed, and said aloud, "Ah, it was never up here." Below him, the valley spread out like a living scroll. He could see the river reflecting light, the villages glowing faintly with lamps, the path winding all the way back down, the same one he had struggled to climb. He realized that every step had been the destination, every breath a teacher, every pause an answer. That night, under a sky scattered with stars, he closed his eyes and meditated, not to reach anything, but to rest where he was. He felt no need to ascend or descend. The mountain and he were one stillness. When dawn came, he began the journey back down. Each stone, each flower, each gust of wind felt new. He saw travelers on the path, tired, impatient, asking how much farther to the top. He smiled and said, "It depends on when you stop rushing." They looked at him, puzzled, and hurried on. He simply kept walking, barefoot now, feeling the earth directly beneath his skin. At the foot of the mountain, he returned to his monastery. The younger monks ran to greet him. "Master, did you find what you were seeking?" they asked. Riesho smiled. He picked up a broom and began sweeping the courtyard. After a long silence, he said, "Yes, it was under my feet the whole time." The monks didn't understand at first, but over the years, they began to see it too. That peace was not found in the reaching, but in the walking, not in the future, but in the step you are taking now. You breathe in. Imagine yourself walking that mountain path. The air is thin, the light soft, the world quiet. Each breath is a step, each step a prayer. You stop trying to get somewhere, and suddenly, you are everywhere. You breathe out. The striving loosens its grip. You realize that all your life you have been climbing toward moments that were already within you. You do not need to reach the top. You only need to walk with awareness. In Zen, they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The work never changes, only the heart that does it. The mountain teaches patience, humility, and presence. The climb never ends, but that is its beauty. You keep walking, not because you must, but because you are alive, and walking is how life breathes through you. As the sun rises again, Riesho sweeps the courtyard, his movements slow and fluid. Dust rises like mist, and the bell rings softly in the distance. A young monk asks, "Master, what are you doing?" Riesho smiles and says, "Climbing the mountain." And then he continues sweeping. The path itself is the destination. When you stop hurrying toward peace and learn to walk each step with awareness, you realize that enlightenment was never a summit. It was the journey all along. Story 17. The Monk and the Raindrop. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the first drops of rain had begun to fall. In the courtyard of a small temple, a young monk named Inso stood watching the storm gather. He loved the rain. He loved how it blurred the edges of the world. The mountains fading in a mist, the sound of water drumming softly on the tiled roofs. He held out his hand, letting a single drop land in his palm. It trembled there, round, clear, alive, reflecting the entire sky in its tiny surface. He whispered, "How strange that something so small can hold the whole world." His teacher, the old Abbot Hakwin, appeared behind him. He watched quietly, then said, "That drop is not small. You are simply too big." Inso looked puzzled. "What do you mean, Master?" Hakwin smiled. "When you see yourself as separate, everything looks small. When you see clearly, even one drop is infinite." He pointed to the sky. Each drop falls from the same cloud. Each returns to the same sea. The difference between drop and ocean is only a thought. The monk nodded slowly, but the meaning didn't sink in. He wanted to understand, not just here. That night, the rain grew stronger. The temple roofs rattled, and water flowed down the steps like small rivers. Inso could not sleep. He sat by the window, watching the storm. He wondered if the drops knew where they were going, if they feared the fall, or if they trusted the wind. In the morning, the storm ended. The world smelled of clean earth and wet leaves. The ponds overflowed. The monk walked outside, barefoot in the mud, his robe heavy with damp air. He stopped at the edge of the courtyard and saw a small puddle reflecting the clouds. He saw his face in it, rippled, distorted. He said quietly, "I am like this water, always trying to keep my shape." He knelt, touched the surface with his fingertip, and watched the reflection dissolve into waves. Then he whispered, "Maybe I'm not meant to keep it." Later that day, Master Hakwin found him cleaning the walkways. He asked, "Tell me, Enso, where does the raindrop go when it falls?" "To the ground," Enso replied. "And then to the river, and then to the sea, and then..." Enso hesitated. "To the sky again." The master smiled. "Yes. So, tell me, when does it stop being the raindrop?" Enso looked at the puddle again. He thought for a long time. Finally, he said, "Maybe it never stops. Maybe it was never just a drop." The master bowed slightly. "Then you have heard the rain." From that day, Enso began to see everything differently. When he washed his bowl, he thanked the water for having fallen as rain. When he drank tea, he thanked the cloud for its generosity. When he breathed, he thanked the trees for lending him air. Every act became an exchange, giving and receiving as one. Years passed. Enso grew older, his hair turning white, his pace slower. But whenever it rained, he would step outside, close his eyes, and smile. He would say to the falling drops, "Welcome home." One afternoon, a younger monk asked him, "Master, what happens when we die?" Enso looked toward the sky, where dark clouds were forming again. He said, "When a raindrop falls into the sea, do you mourn it? Or do you see that it has become the sea itself?" The monk thought for a moment. "But how can we remember who we are if we dissolve?" Enso smiled. "The sea never forgets the rain. You breathe in. Imagine a single drop of water resting on a leaf. Sunlight touches it, and for a moment, it glows like a pearl. You see your reflection inside it, small, complete, shimmering. You realize that all of existence is like this, infinite reflected within the finite. You breathe out. You feel yourself soften. The borders of me and them, mine and yours melting away. You sense that you are not separate from anything, not from the air you breathe, the sound you hear, or the people you love. You are the drop. You are the sea. You are the endless falling and rising all at once. In Zen, they say, when the rain falls, it does not choose where to land. It touches mountains, rooftops, rivers, dirt, and flowers, all without preference. That is the nature of compassion, to flow freely without choosing where to shine. The next morning, as the sun rose and dried the wet ground, Enso saw the dew sparkling on the grass. He whispered, "The rain has become light." He sat cross-legged under the old cedar tree, closed his eyes, and meditated on that truth, not with effort, but with ease. He no longer sought enlightenment. He was part of the same rhythm as the world, falling, rising, returning. When his final day came, he told his students, "Do not cry when I go. Listen for me in the rain." And when the next storm arrived, they did. Each drop that touched the earth carried a quiet sound, like laughter softened by time. You breathe again. You imagine standing in that rain, the cool touch on your face, your hands, your shoulders. Each drop a heartbeat, each breath the sea. You no longer need to hold yourself together. You're already whole everywhere. You are not separate from life. You are part of its endless flow, like a raindrop returning to the sea. Your soul belongs to something vast and eternal. When you realize this, every moment becomes home. Story 18. The Monk and the Candle Flame. Evening descended softly over the temple. The monks gathered in the meditation hall, lighting a row of candles along the altar. The air smelled faintly of wax and sandalwood. Each flame flickered, casting gold ripples across the walls. An old monk named Shin sat before them, watching the light dance. His eyes were kind, lined by years of both laughter and grief. He had spent decades in the temple, guiding others to peace. Yet tonight, his heart felt unusually heavy. That morning, a beloved student, the youngest in the monastery, had left suddenly, saying he wished to find his own path. No farewell ceremony, no final bow, just an empty mat where he once sat. The others whispered in disappointment, but Shin only said, "Let him walk his road." Still, when night came, he felt a quiet ache. He stared at the candles, the small flames quivering in the slightest breeze. He thought of how everything in life is like this light, bright, warm, and temporary. He whispered, "You too will leave me." A younger monk nearby heard him and asked, "Master, does it sadden you to watch them burn away?" Shin smiled faintly. "No, it reminds me to see their beauty before they're gone." He lifted one candle and held it close. The flame glowed steady, reflecting in his eyes. He said, "Do you see how this fire never clings to its own shape? It burns freely. It gives all it has, moment by moment. When the wax is gone, the flame does not mourn. It simply returns to air." The young monk tilted his head. "But when the flame goes out, is that not death?" Shin shook his head. "No, the flame doesn't die. It only changes form. The warmth remains in the air. The light lingers in memory. The wax becomes smoke and ash. Nothing truly disappears." He set the candle back down and said, "That is how we should love, fully, gently, without trying to hold the flame still." As he spoke, the wind picked up. One of the candles flickered and went out. A thin trail of smoke curled upward. The young monk looked distressed. "Should we relight it?" Shin watched the smoke rise, dissolve, and vanish. He said softly, "No, it has completed its purpose." The young monk frowned. "But the altar looks uneven now." Shin chuckled. "So does life." The hall fell silent again. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping softly against the wooden shutters. The remaining flames wavered but held. Shin closed his eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the warmth on his face. He remembered his student, the boy's laughter, his questions, his eager energy. He imagined him somewhere far away, walking through a dark forest or a crowded town, carrying his own inner light. Perhaps, Shin thought, that was the truest teaching, not to keep the flame here, but to send it where it's needed. Later, when all the candles had burned low, Shin rose slowly. One by one, he snuffed out the flames with a quiet breath. Each puff of smoke curled and vanished. Each time, he whispered, "Thank you." When only one candle remained, he turned to his students. He said, "Watch closely." He blew gently, and the last flame went out. Darkness filled the hall, thick and quiet. For a moment, the monks sat uneasy in the absence of light. Then Shin spoke, "Do you see? The darkness is not the enemy of light. It is what allows us to see it at all. Without night, there is no dawn. Without endings, there is no beginning. The rain outside slowed. Moonlight slipped through a gap in the shutters, painting soft silver across the floor. The monks realized that even with the candles gone, the room was not truly dark. Something always replaced what faded. Shin smiled and whispered, "The flame teaches us to burn completely, to live so fully that when we're gone, warmth remains." That night, he wrote in his journal, "The flame does not fear extinction. It trusts the air. You breathe in. You imagine sitting in that hall, surrounded by candles, their light trembling, their wax melting slowly. You feel the warmth on your face, the quiet peace that comes from knowing that nothing lasts, and that this very impermanence is what makes it precious." You breathe out. Think of the things, people, or moments you try to hold on to. How much pain came not from their leaving, but from your resistance to letting them go. Now, imagine blowing softly, not to erase them, but to release them into memory, into air. In Zen, they say, "The candle does not mourn its shadow," meaning endings are part of light's nature, not its failure. Every joy you've known, every love you've lost, every chapter that closed, they're all flames that gave warmth while they could. And in their quiet extinguishing, they left space for new light to appear. You breathe again. Your heart softens. You realize that impermanence is not a thief. It's a teacher. It whispers, "Cherish this. It will not come again." The next morning, Shin sat at the temple gate watching the sunrise. The first light touched the mountains, gold spilling across the valley. He bowed and said, "Last night's darkness made this morning possible." And the wind that carried the scent of melted wax seemed to agree. Everything beautiful is temporary, but its essence never truly leaves. When you accept impermanence, you stop clinging and start living fully, burning brightly for as long as your flame lasts. Story 19. The Monk and the Empty Boat. The river moved gently through the valley, smooth and silver beneath the afternoon sun. Cicadas buzzed in the reeds, and willows trailed their fingers in the water. A lone monk named Taku rowed across the current, his small wooden boat gliding soundlessly. He was returning from the village after delivering rice to the poor. His basket was empty now, his heart calm. He loved this quiet stretch of river. No noise, no rush, just the rhythm of the oars and the whisper of water. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of the river. Then suddenly, thud, something struck the side of his boat hard enough to make it rock. His eyes snapped open. Another small boat had drifted into him, floating from upstream. Anger flared instantly. He shouted, "Hey, watch where you're going." But there was no response. The boat didn't move. He rowed closer, ready to scold the careless oarsman, only to see that the boat was empty. No one inside, just an old, weather-worn vessel, half filled with rainwater, drifting wherever the current took it. Taku froze. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. A quiet, helpless laugh that rippled through the still air. He whispered, "Ah, it's always an empty boat." His anger dissolved like mist in sunlight. He realized that every time he had been struck by words, by insults, by life itself, it was the same. He had imagined an attacker, a someone to blame. But the truth was, most boats that hit us are empty. Sometimes people drift through life, full of their own storms. Their words collide with us, not because of malice, but because they too are carried by unseen currents. He looked at the empty boat again, gently bumping against his own. He pushed it away with his, or watching it drift downstream free. Then he smiled and whispered, "Go in peace." When he reached the temple, he told his teacher what had happened. The old master nodded. He said, "When you meet the empty boat, bow to it, for it shows you where your ego still hides." Taku asked, "Master, how do I remain calm when anger rises?" The master replied, "When the wave comes, don't push it away. Feel it fully, then let it pass. The river does not hold its reflections, neither should you." That night, Taku sat by the same riverbank, the moon glimmering on the surface like 1,000 candles. He imagined his anger, pride, and fears floating by as empty boats, each one touching him, then drifting away. He realized he didn't have to chase or fight them. He could simply watch, smile, and let them go. The river's current whispered a lesson: nothing stays. Nothing belongs. Everything passes. From that night on, whenever someone insulted him or tried to provoke him, Taku would pause, breathe, and remember the boat. He would say quietly to himself, "It's empty." Even in moments of hurt, those two words became his calm. You breathe in. Imagine yourself on that river. The water smooth, the breeze gentle. You're rowing slowly, peacefully, when another boat bumps into yours. At first, irritation sparks. You want to shout, defend, prove. Then you look closer and see there's no one there. You breathe out. You smile. You realize that this is how most pain works. The world doesn't always target you. It just drifts. You are never the victim, only the witness. In Zen, they say, if you let the boat be empty, the river stays calm. It means when the ego steps aside, life's collisions lose their sting. Think about the last time someone hurt you. Maybe they spoke harshly, ignored you, or broke your trust. You held that pain, believing it was personal. But what if it wasn't? What if they too were an empty boat, drifting lost, full of their own unseen storms? When you see that clearly, compassion replaces anger. You stop shouting at the river. You simply row on. The next morning, as the fog lifted, Taku returned to the river. He saw the same empty boat caught in reeds near the bank. He pulled it ashore, repaired its cracks, and tied it safely to a post. A passing villager asked, "Why fix a boat no one owns?" Taku smiled, because peace also begins where blame ends. The villager tilted his head, confused, but bowed politely and continued walking. Taku stood by the water, watching his reflection ripple and reform. He whispered, "Each of us is both the river and the boat. Sometimes we drift, sometimes we collide, but always we move towards stillness." He stepped into his boat and pushed away from shore, rowing slowly, calmly. This time, when another small branch struck his side, he simply laughed. You breathe in. You imagine your own mind as that quiet river, sometimes calm, sometimes struck by drifting boats. You can't stop them all, but you can stop believing every collision means war. You breathe out. Let the empty boats go. Let words pass. Let life flow without resistance. Even when pain touches you, remember, the current moves on. You remain. Peace begins when you stop taking things personally. When you realize most harm comes from drifting minds, not deliberate hearts. compassion replaces anger, and your river stays clear. Story 20. The Monk and the Bell Tower. The monastery stood on the edge of a high hill, overlooking a quiet valley. Every morning before dawn, the great bronze bell would ring, a single, deep note that rolled through the fog like thunder, softened by compassion. The monks called it the sound of awakening. A young monk named Run had recently arrived at the temple. He rose each morning before the sun, but he never heard the bell clearly. His mind was always elsewhere, planning, remembering, worrying. When the bell rang, he bowed mechanically, his thoughts already running ahead to the day's chores. The sound never reached his heart. One morning, the abbot asked him, "Run, do you hear the bell?" Rin bowed. "Yes, master." The abbot shook his head. "No, you only listen. You do not hear." Rin frowned. "What is the difference?" The abbot smiled. "When you listen, there is you and the sound. When you hear, only the sound remains." That evening, after the chores were done, the abbot took Rin to the bell tower. The sky was red with the last light of sunset. The great bell hung silent, dark metal etched with prayers. The abbot said, "Strike it once." Rin grasped the rope and pulled. The mallet swung and hit the bell with a deep gong that vibrated through the air, through the ground, through his chest. The abbot said, "Now strike again, but do not just hear the sound. Feel how the silence before and after the sound are the same." Rin did. This time, he noticed something, a stillness that began before the note and lingered long after it faded. It wasn't the sound that was important, but the space it revealed. The abbot nodded. Awakening is like this. The sound is the moment. The silence is your true nature. That night, Rin couldn't sleep. He sat in the courtyard, replaying the sound in his mind. The deep vibration, the pause, the echo, fading into stillness. He realized that his whole life had been noise, thoughts clanging against each other, drowning out the simple truth that silence was always underneath. The next morning, he decided to listen differently. When the bell rang at dawn, he stopped everything, not just his body, but his thoughts. He breathed. The sound rolled through him, one long, pure note. It filled him completely, then left him empty in the most peaceful way. Tears welled in his eyes. For the first time, he truly heard. From that day, Rin's way of living changed. When he swept the courtyard, he listened to the broom whispering across stone. When he washed rice, he heard the rhythm of water meeting bowl. When he breathed, he heard the pulse of life moving through him. The bell had taught him that everything rings if you're quiet enough to notice. One afternoon, while tending to the garden, he asked the abbot, "Master, how long did it take you to awaken?" The abbot smiled. "Only as long as it took to stop waiting for the sound." Ren tilted his head. "You mean?" The abbot said, "The bell does not wake you. You wake yourself when you decide to hear." Years passed. Ren eventually became the one chosen to ring the bell each dawn. He never rushed the ritual. He would stand before it, palms together, and whisper, "May all beings awaken." Then he would pull the rope gently, and the bell would speak. Its voice spread over mountains, fields, and rivers, reaching even the distant villages still half asleep. Farmers paused, travelers lifted their heads, birds scattered, all touched by the same vibration of now. The monk said that when Rin rang the bell, it sounded different, clearer, deeper, somehow more alive. But Ren only smiled and said, "It's not the bell that changed." One morning, years later, the abbot grew ill. Before his final day, he asked Ren to bring him to the bell tower. They sat together in silence. The abbot whispered, "Do you remember what I told you long ago? That silence is your true nature?" Ren nodded. The abbot smiled faintly. "Then when I am gone, do not mourn. I will be the silence between the sounds." He passed peacefully that night. At dawn, Ren climbed the bell tower alone. The air was cold. The valley below was blanketed in mist. He placed his hand on the bell, closed his eyes, and whispered, "For you, Master." He struck once. The sound rolled through the valley, vast and deep, spreading into the clouds, echoing across miles. When it faded, the silence that followed was the most beautiful sound Ren had ever heard. He smiled and whispered, "Yes, Master, I hear you." You breathe in. You imagine yourself in that tower, the wind brushing your face, the bell hanging before you, silent, ancient, patient. You touch it lightly and feel how even still metal hums with unseen life. You breathe out. You realize that every moment, every sound, every breath is its own bell, calling you back to awareness. You do not have to wait for enlightenment to arrive. It's already ringing inside you. In Zen, they say, when the bell rings, do not seek the sound, be the sound. It means awakening is not something you reach. It's something you allow. You breathe again. The air moves gently in your lungs. The world hums quietly around you. Rain, wind, footsteps, silence. It's all the same bell. It's all the same awakening. Ren continued to ring the bell every morning until his final day. And long after he was gone, villagers still said that when the dawn fog was thick, they could faintly hear his bell echoing, deep, distant, eternal. Perhaps it was memory. Perhaps it was the mountain itself, ringing in gratitude. Either way, the sound never left. Awakening is not about finding silence. It's about hearing the silence that's already here. When you stop chasing sound and begin to listen fully, the whole world becomes a bell ringing you awake. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the breath find its own rhythm. No control, no force. Just inhale and exhale, like waves arriving and leaving the shore. Never in a hurry, never too late. You've walked through the gardens of these stories, 20 paths, each whispering the same truth in a different voice. The tea master who met fear with calm. The gardener who swept leaves that always returned. The potter who turned cracks into gold. The fisherman who found peace in silence. The monk who bowed to his own shadow. Each one taught you what words cannot fully say. That life's peace begins where holding ends. You breathe in and remember the river, how it carried stones, leaves, and reflections without keeping any of them. It flowed because it did not cling. You breathe out and feel yourself soften, like water finding its way through everything without resistance. This is the secret of letting go. It's not about losing. It's about trusting movement. Life is not a possession. It's a current. You're meant to flow. Think of all the things you've once held tightly. A plan that didn't unfold, a person who drifted away, a version of yourself that no longer fits. Each felt like something precious you had to protect. But everything you love is like the bird in the cage, beautiful only when it's free. And when you open your hands, What you thought was leaving was really just changing form. Letting go is not saying goodbye. It's saying thank you. The bamboo and the storm taught you this, that the wind is not your enemy, and bending is not defeat. Every time you bowed, you survived. And when you stood again, you were stronger, not because you fought, but because you flowed. The cracked cup reminded you that imperfection doesn't mean brokenness. Your scars are golden lines, proof that healing has passed through you. You are not less for having cracked. You are more for having been made whole again. The flame in the candle showed you that even endings have light. Everything fades, but nothing truly disappears. The warmth remains in memory, in others, in the quiet ways life continues to echo long after. You learn that impermanence is not cruel. It is kind because it reminds you to love now. The empty boat taught you not to take the world so personally. So much pain dissolves when you see that others drift through their own storms, unaware. Their anger, their harshness, their silence, none of it defines you. Let them float away and keep your river still. The shadow showed you that the parts you've hidden are not monsters. They are wounds waiting for kindness. You don't find peace by destroying darkness. You find it by holding it gently until it no longer needs to fight. Every light casts a shadow, and every shadow points to light. You breathe again. The mountain taught you patience, to walk, not race. There is no summit to reach, no finish line to cross. Each breath, each step is enlightenment already happening. The climb never ends because the climb is life. And the bell reminded you that awakening isn't something distant. It's here, in the hum of your breath, in the pause between thoughts, in the space where sound turns to silence. Every moment rings softly, calling you to return to the present. You breathe in deeply now. You feel all these stories gather inside you like quiet friends sitting together in stillness. They are no longer stories. They are movements of your own being, lessons your heart already knew but had forgotten how to hear. You breathe out, and everything softens: the body, the mind, the need to understand. Letting go is not a single act. It's a rhythm, a continuous surrender, a daily trust that life knows where to flow even when you don't. So now, imagine this. You're standing by a river at dusk. The water glows with the last light of day. The wind carries the scent of pine and rain. All around you, the world is both ending and beginning, as it always is. In your hand, you hold something you've carried too long: a worry, a name, a regret, a dream that no longer breathes. Feel its weight, honor it, and when you're ready, release it into the river. Watch it drift away, slowly at first, then farther and farther, until it becomes part of the flow. No splash, no struggle, no loss, only movement. Now listen. You hear the faint echo of a temple bell somewhere in the distance. The sound rolls through the air, through the water, through you. It doesn't call you to do anything. It just reminds you you're already here. Let the breath move again, deep, steady, unhurried. Let the body rest like a mountain. Let the mind clear like a pond after rain. Let the heart open like bamboo in the wind. Nothing to change, nothing to fix, only to see, to feel, to be. In this stillness, you realize that letting go is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of peace. Because once you stop trying to hold the world, your hands are finally free to touch it. You breathe again. You feel lighter. Every inhale is receiving. Every exhale is releasing. Both belong to the same motion, the sacred balance of living. And in this breath, just this one, you find that there is nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing separate. You're the river. You're the mountain. You are the bell, the shadow, the flame, the drop of rain. You are the silence between heartbeats. And you are home. Letting go is not about detachment from life. It's about intimacy with it. It's seeing clearly that every joy, every sorrow, every beginning and ending are waves of the same ocean. To let go is to stop resisting what already is, to trust the rhythm, to bow to the flow. When you live this way, peace no longer comes and goes. It becomes the quiet current beneath every moment, calm, constant, infinite. So whenever you forget, return to your breath. It is the gentlest bell. It will always lead you home. Letting go is the purest form of love for yourself, for others, for life itself. It doesn't mean losing what you cherish. It means seeing that you never needed to hold it to keep it.